A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal. Learn more at modal.com.
So, Herman, I think we need to start today by looking at the map, specifically that little piece of land called Nakhchivan. Because what happened there on March 5th, 2026 wasn't just another regional skirmish. It was a klaxon going off for the entire international community. It was the moment the shadow war between Tehran and Jerusalem finally spilled over into the Caucasus in a way that can no longer be ignored or downplayed.
You are exactly right, Corn. Herman Poppleberry here, and I have been glued to the sidetraps coming out of the region for the last week. That drone strike on Nakhchivan by Iranian-linked forces, specifically using the upgraded Shahed 136M variants, really shattered the illusion that Azerbaijan could remain a quiet, behind-the-scenes partner for Israel while the rest of the region is on fire. For years, Baku played this incredibly delicate balancing act, but that ended on March 5th. It is no longer a shadow alliance. It is a frontline reality.
It is fascinating because our friend Daniel sent us this prompt asking about the evolution of this specific relationship. And it is so timely because we are seeing the transition from what people used to call the discrete or quiet alliance into something that looks a lot more like a formalized, high-stakes geopolitical marriage. And it is happening right as the broader conflict with the Iranian regime reaches a fever pitch. We are talking just 7 days after the strike, and the diplomatic landscape has already shifted more than it has in the last decade.
It is the ultimate realpolitik case study. You have Israel, the Jewish state, and Azerbaijan, a secular but overwhelmingly Muslim-majority nation, finding themselves in a strategic embrace that is arguably more stable and more consequential than many of Israel's relationships with Western powers right now. And that strike on March 5th was the catalyst. It forced President Ilham Aliyev to decide if he was going to stay in the shadows or step out into the light with his partners in Jerusalem and Washington. The response we have seen, the immediate high-level consultations, and the movement of defense assets suggests the choice has been made.
Well, let us set the stage for why this matters so much. We are talking about a country that borders Iran, Russia, and Turkey. It is the literal crossroads of Eurasia. And for years, the logic of the relationship was pretty simple. My enemy's neighbor is my friend. But as we discussed back in episode 1011, when we talked about Israel's strategic schizophrenia, the world has changed. Back then, we analyzed how Israel was trying to balance its ties with Russia and China against its core security needs. Now, in March 2026, that schizophrenia is being cured by the sheer heat of the Iranian threat. We are not just looking at a regional rivalry anymore. We are looking at a fundamental realignment of the Caucasus.
And to understand where we are going with this new United States, Israel-Azerbaijan trilateral framework that is being proposed in Washington this week, we have to look at the pillars that held the house up while it was still a secret. The biggest one, the one that provides the hard floor for everything else, is energy. This isn't just about trade, it is about survival.
Right. The numbers there are staggering. Most people do not realize that Azerbaijan supplies approximately 46% of Israel's total crude oil imports. Think about that. Nearly half of the fuel keeping the Israeli economy and military moving comes from a single source in the Caspian Sea. If that flow stops, the Israeli Defense Forces have a massive logistical nightmare on their hands within weeks.
And it flows through the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, or the BTC, which is a marvel of engineering and diplomacy in itself. It bypasses both Russia and Iran, which is why it is so strategically vital. But what is even more interesting in 2026 is how that relationship has become a two-way street in the energy sector. It is not just Israel buying Azeri oil anymore. SOCAR, the state oil company of the Azerbaijan Republic, now holds a significant stake in Israel's Tamar offshore gas field.
That is a massive shift, Herman. When a foreign state-owned company from a Muslim-majority nation owns a piece of your critical energy infrastructure, that is not just a trade deal. That is a blood pact. It means their economic prosperity is directly tied to the physical security of Israel's Mediterranean waters. If a Hezbollah rocket hits a platform in the Tamar field, they are not just hitting an Israeli asset, they are hitting an Azeri investment. It creates a level of skin in the game that no diplomatic treaty can match.
It creates a circle of mutual defense that is incredibly difficult to break. And that energy security loop is mirrored almost perfectly in the defense sector. While Israel gets its oil from Baku, Azerbaijan gets its qualitative military edge from Jerusalem. The statistics from the last few years show that between 60 and 69% of Azerbaijan's military equipment imports are sourced from Israeli defense contractors like Elbit Systems, Israel Aerospace Industries, and Rafael.
I remember seeing the footage from the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. That was really the coming out party for Israeli loitering munitions, wasn't it? The Harop and the Sky Striker drones. They essentially redefined how modern conventional warfare is fought in that theater. It was the first time we saw suicide drones used at that scale to dismantle a conventional, Soviet-style integrated air defense system.
They did. The Harop specifically became a household name in the region. It is essentially a cruise missile with a brain. It can loiter over a target for hours, searching for radar emissions or specific vehicle signatures before diving in with surgical precision. The Azeris used them to dismantle Armenian S-300 systems that many thought were impenetrable. But fast forward to today, in March 2026, and that technology has evolved. We are seeing integrated AI systems, advanced electronic warfare suites, and real-time satellite imagery sharing that goes way beyond just selling a few drones. We are talking about a shared digital battlefield.
And this brings us back to the March 5th strike on Nakhchivan. Why would the Iranians, or their proxies, target that specific enclave now? It seems like a massive gamble, especially given that Nakhchivan is separated from the rest of Azerbaijan and sits right on the border of Turkey and Iran.
It is a gamble born of desperation, corn. As we analyzed in episode 1009 regarding the financial decapitation of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps' oil empire, the regime in Tehran is feeling squeezed. The sanctions and the kinetic operations against their smuggling networks have worked. They see Azerbaijan as the launchpad for Israeli intelligence, specifically the Mossad signals intelligence units, and potentially for kinetic operations. By striking Nakhchivan, they were trying to send a message to President Ilham Aliyev. Your alliance with the Zionists has a price, and we can reach you where you are most vulnerable. They wanted to test the one nation, two states promise from Turkey and the security guarantees from Israel.
But it seems to have backfired. Instead of backing away, the Azeri leadership seems to be leaning in. I mean, look at the recent memorandums of understanding signed in Jerusalem just 48 hours ago. We are talking about deep cooperation in digital infrastructure, cybersecurity, and even agricultural technology for the reclaimed territories in Karabakh. It is as if the strike acted as a chemical catalyst, bonding these two nations even tighter.
It is because the Azeris are pragmatists. They look at the map and they see a declining Russia that is too distracted by its own internal mess and the ongoing stagnation in Ukraine to be a reliable security guarantor. They see an aggressive Iran that wants to export its revolutionary ideology and views a secular, successful Azerbaijan as an existential threat to its own internal stability, especially given the large ethnic Azeri population inside Iran. And then they look at Israel, a country that provides them with the best technology in the world and asks for nothing in return except a reliable energy partner and a friendly ear in the Caucasus. It is the ultimate realpolitik win-win.
I want to touch on something that often gets overlooked in these high-level geopolitical discussions, and that is the cultural glue. We often talk about these things as if they are just spreadsheets of oil barrels and missile counts. But there is a deep historical connection through the Juhuro, the mountain Jews. This isn't a manufactured friendship. It has deep roots.
Oh, that is a crucial point, Korn. The mountain Jews have lived in Azerbaijan for over 2,000 years. They are one of the oldest Jewish communities in the world, and unlike in many other parts of the Islamic world, they have historically been treated with immense respect and integrated into the fabric of society. There is a village called Kermizi Kasaba, or the Red Village, in the Kuba district, which is said to be the only all-Jewish town outside of Israel and the United States. It is a living testament to Azeri multiculturalism.
And President Aliyev points to this constantly. For him, the relationship with Israel isn't just a strategic necessity, it is a proof point for his vision of Azerbaijan as a secular, multicultural state. It is a way to say to the West, look, we are a Muslim-majority country where Jews are safe and where we partner with the Jewish state. It gives them immense diplomatic cover when they are criticized for their domestic political structure. It is a shield made of history.
It really does. It serves as a bridge. When you have people like the Azeri ambassador Ronan Kraus or officials like Rashad Nabiev visiting Jerusalem, they aren't just there as foreign dignitaries. There is a sense of genuine affinity. It is a shared identity of being a small, proud nation in a very dangerous neighborhood. They both feel like they are fighting for their right to exist in a region that hasn't always been kind to them.
So, let us talk about the strategic triangle. We have Israel and Azerbaijan, but we can't ignore the third player in this drama, which is Turkey. This is where it gets complicated, right? Because the relationship between Jerusalem and Ankara has been a roller coaster. In episode 1011, we talked about how Turkey's regional ambitions often clashed with Israeli interests. But things have shifted in the last year.
A roller coaster that is currently on a very steep incline, fortunately. President Erdogan has realized that his neo-Ottoman ambitions were hitting a wall, and he needs the Israel-Azerbaijan axis to counter Iranian influence just as much as anyone else does. The phrase one nation, two states is often used to describe the Turkey-Azerbaijan relationship. But in practice, in 2026, it has become more like one regional security architecture, three partners. Turkey provides the strategic depth and the land bridge. Azerbaijan provides the energy and the forward positioning, and Israel provides the technological and intelligence edge.
It is a fascinating dynamic. When those three are aligned, the Iranians are effectively boxed in from the north and the west. This is why the United States is now pushing for this formal trilateral framework. They want to institutionalize this. They want to move away from these being a series of bilateral handshakes and turn it into a recognized regional bloc. Think of it as a northern version of the Abraham Accords, but with a much sharper military edge because of the direct proximity to the Iranian border.
And that is the key difference. The Abraham Accords were largely about normalization and trade with Gulf states that are geographically separated from Iran by the Persian Gulf. Azerbaijan is right there. They share a long, porous border. The stakes are much higher. If this trilateral framework is signed, it essentially puts a United States security umbrella over the Caucasus. That is a massive shift in the global balance of power.
Do you think Azerbaijan is ready for that level of exposure, though? Being part of a formal trilateral framework with the United States and Israel is a very different thing than having a quiet intelligence sharing agreement. It makes them a primary target. We saw what happened on March 5th. That was just a warning shot.
That is the big question. Up until that drone strike, I would have said they were hesitant. They liked the quiet part of the alliance because it gave them plausible deniability. But the strike on Nakhchivan might have been the decider. When you are already being shot at, the benefits of staying quiet start to disappear. You might as well have the full public backing of the world's only superpower and the region's most capable military. It is about moving from strategic ambiguity to strategic clarity.
It reminds me of what we discussed in episode 861 about modeling Israel's strategic pivot. We are seeing these middle powers, like Azerbaijan, realizing that strategic ambiguity is a luxury they can no longer afford in a world where the old guardrails are gone. The international order is fragmenting into these smaller, high-tech security clusters.
And the tech diplomacy aspect of this is just as important as the missiles. We are seeing Israeli companies helping Azerbaijan build smart cities in the territories they retook from Armenia. We are seeing collaboration on water desalination and desert agriculture. This is about making Azerbaijan a modern high-tech hub in the Caucasus. If you tie your civilian infrastructure to Israeli tech, you are creating a long-term dependency that survives even if the immediate security threat changes. It is a silicon bond.
That brings up a really provocative point that was in the brief Daniel sent us. What happens if the Iranian threat goes away? If there is a regime change in Tehran, or if the nuclear issue is somehow resolved, does the core logic of the Israel-Azerbaijan alliance dissolve? Is it purely built on a shared enemy?
That is the existential question for this partnership. My take is that the security threat was the catalyst, but the economic and technological integration has now taken on a life of its own. Once you have 46% of your oil coming from one place, and that place has its sovereign wealth tied up in your gas fields, you are partners for the long haul. You don't just walk away from that because the guy next door stopped being a bully. The infrastructure, the pipelines, the fiber optic cables, the joint defense factories, those are permanent fixtures.
Plus, there is the Russia factor. Even if Iran were to become a liberal democracy tomorrow, Azerbaijan still has a massive, unpredictable neighbor to the north. Russia has historically viewed the Caucasus as its backyard, its near abroad. Azerbaijan's relationship with Israel and Turkey is their insurance policy against a neo-imperialist Russia. That logic doesn't go away. In fact, as Russia becomes more aligned with Iran out of necessity, Azerbaijan's pivot to the West and Israel becomes even more logical.
Very true. And let us not forget the internal dynamics in Israel. As we have seen with the Herzog administration, there is a very conscious effort to diversify Israel's alliances beyond just the traditional Western powers. There is a deep respect for the way President Aliyev runs his country. It is stable, it is secular, and it is reliable. In a world of chaotic democracies and radical theocracies, a reliable, pragmatic partner is worth its weight in gold.
It really is. I think we should dig a bit deeper into the specifics of the defense cooperation, because I think people underestimate the scale. We are not just talking about buying drones off the shelf. We are talking about joint ventures. There are factories in Azerbaijan right now, like Azad Systems, producing Israeli-designed drones locally.
Yes, and that is a huge advantage for Israel too. It gives them a footprint in the region that is much deeper than just a diplomatic mission. It means Israeli engineers and technicians are on the ground, integrated into the Azeri defense establishment. The level of trust required for that is immense. It extends to the sea too. The Azeri Navy has been modernized with Israeli help, specifically with the SAR-62 class offshore patrol vessels and advanced missile systems. This is all about protecting those energy assets in the Caspian that we talked about earlier. Everything is connected. The oil pays for the drones protect the oil, and the technology ensures the edge over any potential aggressor.
It is a perfect closed loop, but I want to go back to the human element for a second, because we mentioned the Juhro, but there is also the modern Israeli Azeri community. There are tens of thousands of Jews from Azerbaijan living in Israel today, and they maintain very strong ties to their homeland. They are a massive lobby for this relationship.
They are. Unlike many other immigrant groups who fled persecution, the Azeri Jews generally have very fond memories of Baku. They go back for weddings, they do business there, and they act as a natural bridge for cultural and economic exchange. When President Herzog visited Baku, he was greeted not just as a head of state, but as a representative of a sister nation. You can really feel that when you talk to people involved in the relationship. There is a lack of the usual friction you see in Middle Eastern diplomacy. There are no lectures about human rights from one side or complaints about regional policy from the other. It is just, what do you need, what do we need, and how do we get it done?
It is pure realpolitik, and frankly, it is refreshing. It is a relationship based on mutual interest and mutual respect, without the performative moralizing that often clutters up international relations. And in the context of 2026, where the stakes are literally existential, that kind of clarity is incredibly valuable.
It really is. So, looking ahead, what should our listeners be watching for? If this trilateral framework with the United States actually gets signed, what does that look like on the ground?
Watch the deployment of integrated air defense systems. If we start seeing United States-made Patriot batteries or Israeli Arrow 3 systems being deployed in Azerbaijan, that is a signal that the red lines have moved. It means the alliance is no longer just about intelligence and drones. It is about a shared, integrated shield against ballistic missiles. That would be a massive escalation in the eyes of Tehran.
And keep an eye on Nakhchivan. That enclave is the most vulnerable point in the whole system. If the Iranians continue to poke there, it could force a much larger regional response. It is the classic tripwire. Also, watch the energy markets. If SOCAR increases its stake in more Israeli Mediterranean blocks, or if we see a formal agreement for a trans-Caspian pipeline to bring even more gas toward the west through this corridor, that will tell you that the economic integration has reached a point of no return.
It really is one of the most fascinating stories in modern geopolitics. This secular, Muslim-majority country in the Caucasus becoming the primary regional anchor for Israeli security. It defies almost every conventional narrative about the region. It shows that interests usually trump ideology in the end. The Pavelberry brothers' rule of thumb: follow the oil, follow the drones, and you will usually find the truth.
It is about building a coalition of the capable, not just a coalition of the willing. And Azerbaijan has proven itself to be very capable indeed. We are seeing the same thing in the cyber realm. If you are Azerbaijan, you are being hit by Iranian and Russian cyber attacks every single day. They need the Israeli cyber dome just as much as they need the physical Iron Dome. I suspect that a lot of what was signed in Jerusalem recently is about creating a shared cyber defense perimeter. It is the new frontier of the alliance.
It makes sense. If you can't break the physical shield, you try to turn off the lights. But with Israeli tech integrated into their grid, that becomes a much harder task. It is a total defense package: land, sea, air, and silicon. And we haven't even touched on the space program. The Azeri program has been using Israeli-made high-resolution imaging satellites for years. It is what gives them that bird's-eye view of the entire region. You can't hide a tank or a missile launcher from those optics. The alliance literally reaches into space.
It is a blueprint for how alliances are going to look in the mid-21st century. They are going to be transactional, high-tech, and built on very specific shared security requirements. The old model of broad, ideological blocks like NATO is being supplemented by these agile, specialized partnerships.
Well said, Herman. I think we have given people a lot to chew on here. This isn't just a niche regional story, it is a preview of the future. Before we wrap up, I want to remind everyone that if you are finding these deep dives helpful, please leave us a review on your podcast app. Whether you are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, those ratings really do help other curious minds find the show. We have been doing this for over 1,100 episodes now, and the community we have built is what keeps us going.
It really does. And if you want to stay updated, the best way is to head over to myweirdprompts.com. You can find the RSS feed there, or if you are on Telegram, just search for My Weird Prompts to get a notification every time a new episode drops. We are living through some incredibly consequential times, and we are glad to have you all along for the ride.
Thanks again to Daniel for sending in this prompt. It was a great excuse to dig into a topic that is often misunderstood or just ignored by the mainstream press. The Quiet Alliance isn't so quiet anymore, and the world is a different place because of it.
It certainly is. Stay curious, stay informed, and we will talk to you in the next one.
All right, that is it for today. This has been My Weird Prompts.
Take care, everyone.
See you next time.
Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts.